passes. Moving to file item 130, that's AB 610. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 610 by Assemblymember Jones Sawyer, an act relating to child support, declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Mr. Jones Sawyer, you may open.
Mr. Speaker and members, debt accrued while incarcerated, in particular child support debt, is a huge barrier to successful reentry into society. Unable to catch up on child support, people who are formerly incarcerated and largely low income turn to crime to make ends meet, which strains both the parent-child and parent-parent relationships. Assembly Bill 610 will extend an existing law to permit a parent who is incarcerated with no income to freeze their child support order administratively if, and I repeat, if both parents have no reservations. The support order will be reinstated when the person is released from incarceration. This bill also addresses the issue of federal penalties this state faces due to the accumulation of uncollected child support orders, especially among the incarcerated. AB 610 has no opposition and has already garnered bipartisan support in both policy and fiscal committees. Therefore, I humbly ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Ms. Jones Sawyer. Mr. Wagner, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Briefly, I want to rise and amplify a point made by the author. This is an issue that is legitimately causing some consternation on probably both sides of the aisle, certainly mine. The crimes that these folks are accused of and the penalties that they are supposed to pay are entirely legitimate and are things that we should not lightly let sort of fall by the wayside. And so there's the tendency, I think, to keep the pressure on. I think in this circumstance, however, the author has made a very compelling case that we're not going soft on crime. We're not allowing folks to get away with not paying their child support, recognizing two very fundamental realities. One, when these folks are in jail, making license plates at a nickel a day, and these awards are compounding with no reasonable reality that they can be ever paid back, we ought to recognize that absolute financial reality. And secondly, we especially ought to do it, as the author says, in circumstances where to not do so jeopardizes the level of funding that we can get back and are entitled to get back from the federal government. So recognizing the realities of the situation and in no way attempting to excuse the conduct, I would suggest to my colleagues this is very much a supportable bill and do urge passage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Seeing no further discussion on this item, Mr. Jones Sawyer, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
With that, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. Ayes 67, noes 4 on the urgency. Ayes 67, noes 4 on the bill. Measure passes. File items 131 and 132 pass and retain. Moving to file item 133, that's AB 1043. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1043 by Assemblymember Salas, an act relating to state highways.
Mr. Salas, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I present before you AB 1043, which makes Interregional Route 43 eligible to compete for interregional transportation funds. With that, I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Salas. Seeing no discussion or debate on this item, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. Ayes 55, noes 13. Measure passes. File item 134, pass and retain. Moving to file item 135, that's AB 1058. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1058 by Assemblymember Baker and others, an act relating to people safety.
Ms. Baker, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to urge your aye vote today in support of AB 1058, a bill that will help prevent child abuse in our schools and on school programs and school facilities by expanding the training we provide to our school employees on preventing child abuse. Last year, we instituted, this body passed a bill authored by our good colleague from Glendale that required there be training for our teachers for the first time on what their reporting requirements are when they suspect child abuse in school programs and school property. This was great progress that we can build on today. I'm pleased to join our co-author from Glendale in supporting this bill that basically says that training that now is mandated for teachers on child abuse includes a prevention component. Right now, all that we do is train them on reporting requirements. If they suspect child abuse, what their requirements could be. It's much better if we also include training on prevention, so there's nothing that has to be reported. This is a bill that passed unanimously out of the Education Committee and as well as the Appropriations Committee. And members, last month we declared, and we all voted on a resolution declaring April Child Abuse Prevention Month, which was an excellent gesture. This bill actually takes a great step towards preventing child abuse, and I'd be grateful for and urge your aye vote.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. Mr. Wagner, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise somewhat conflicted on my colleague's first bill, and the reason is this: I've been here a while and really appreciate what we do as lawmakers, as legislators, and this bill doesn't exactly go there. Because I'm reading from the author's own statement in support of the bill. Permission to read, Mr. Speaker.
Without objection.
This bill would also encourage local agencies to do certain stuff. Encourage. Now, I think of the legislature making laws. You will do this. You shall do that. I think of the great lawmakers of the past that Ms. Baker would no doubt like to follow in their footsteps. The Code of Hammurabi didn't encourage. Moses didn't come down from the mountaintop with encouragement. Thou shalt and shalt not. The Magna Carta. The Magna Carta didn't encourage the king to be nice to the nobles. Question to the author.
Without objection.
Is this the kinder, gentler Republican lawmaking style?
Ms. Baker, you may respond.
I thank the good colleague for his question, and first note that as an attorney, I'm sure he knows to read the entire bill, which does include not just encouragement, but a requirement that the Department of Education actually establish guidelines and best practices for child abuse prevention for the first time. So this bill does certainly do more than encouraging. But as a member of the bar, I think it's better if I ask or answer your question and see if you would agree and speak in the language that is more intelligent than we often hear on this body, but we often hear as attorneys. And tell me if you agree with this. Fundamentum justitiae primum est nihil nociatur.
Res ipsa loquitur, ma'am. With that, I would encourage an aye vote.
Members, this is support. Mr. Alejo, you're recognized.
Yeah, question for the author.
Without objection.
There's an objection. Are we joking around or are we serious?
That's my fact.
Members, if there's an objection, we may not proceed with the question. Is there a point of order on the floor?
No, unless the rules are suspended. But unless the rules are
State your point of order, Mr. Alejo.
If there's an objection, it could be called for a vote. Is that correct? Question for a parliamentarian.
Members, with regard to suspension of the rules, it takes 41 votes to overrule an objection to a question being asked. Are you asking for that?
motion and a second.
That takes a motion and a second. Mr. Alejo moves. Is there a second? Mr. Jones seconds. This is a motion to suspend the rules, members. This is procedural. The clerk will open the roll. Mr. Alejo is asking for an aye vote. This takes 41 votes, members, to suspend the rules. We just call the vote. Clerk will close the roll. We have 34 votes in the affirmative. Motion fails. Have a seat, Mr. Alejo. Ms. Baker, you may close.
I respectfully urge your aye vote and thank you for the thoughtful consideration.
With that, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. Ayes 75, no 0. Measure passes. File items 136 through 142 pass and retain. Moving to file item 143, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 83 by Assemblymember Gatto, an act relating to personal data.
Mr. Gatto, you may open.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This bill would establish best practices for all companies that store or transmit our data. We all know that breaches are increasingly becoming a fact of life in the world out there, and this bill would protect California consumers from said breaches. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
See no discussion or debate on this item. The clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 60, noes 3. Measure passes. File item 144, pass and retain. File item 145, that's H.R. 20. Clerk will read.
House Resolution 20 by Assemblymember Williams, relative to Compost Awareness Week.
Mr. Williams, you may open.
Mr. Speaker, members, I rise to make you aware of one of my favorite subjects, compost. I know that's not always exciting to everyone, but I think anything that can reduce GHGs and create jobs is very exciting. You should too. If all California's food scraps were either recycled or in your belly, our landfill emissions would be cut by 3 million tons of CO2 per year. Applying compost can actually pull massive amounts of CO2 out of the atmosphere and store it permanently, as was shown in a project in our colleague from Marin's district. Application of compost is especially important during the drought because in ag, applying compost can increase the water holding capacity of soils by 1/4 to 1/3, allowing soil to act like a sponge and retain every drop of the very limited rainfall that we have. Ton for ton, composts generates 4 times more jobs than landfilling of the same material. And CalRecycle estimates that recovering enough organic waste to meet the state's 75% goal will generate 14,000 new jobs by 2020. H.R. 20 appropriately recognizes the importance of compost by designating May 3rd through May 9th as Compost Awareness Week. That's this week. Respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Seeing no discussion or debate on the resolution, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 75, no 0. Resolution passes. File item 146, AB 525, for the purpose of amendments. Clerk will read with amendments.
Assembly Bill 525 with amendments by Assemblymember Holden.
Mr. Holden, you may open on the amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am presenting Assembly Bill 525 for purposes of amendments. These amendments will clarify the termination provisions of the measure to ensure the bill meets its goals of better conforming franchise agreements to traditional contracts. The amendments also make several technical changes as recommended by Legislative Council and add a joint author. I respectfully ask for your aye vote on these amendments.
Ms. Waldron, you are recognized.
Republicans are supporting the amendments.
Thank you, Ms. Waldron. Without objection, we may take a voice vote on the amendments. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. Bill is out to print and back on file. File items 147 through 149 pass and retain. Moving up to file item 150, that's AB 506. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 506 by Assemblymember Mainshine, an act relating to business.
Mr. Mainshine, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 506 amends the revised Uniform Limited Liability Company Act to provide clarification on a number of unclear provisions in the statute. It will do so by clarifying the transition rules and making technical changes to cross-reference and typographical inconsistency. I'd respectfully request an aye vote.
Seeing no discussion or debate on this item, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 74, no 0. Measure passes. File item 151, pass and retain. File item 152, that's AB 844. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 844 by Assemblymember Bloom, an act relating to search warrants.
Mr. Bloom, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, today I am presenting Assembly Bill 844, which would amend the definition of properly served in the Penal Code to comport with technological innovations and modern business practices. It's an increasingly prevalent practice of communication and computing service companies to insist on electronic service of process. That makes perfect sense. But such policies may request that service be by email or via a web portal provided by the company. However, California law does not explicitly recognize electronic service of process other than by facsimile, a truly outdated technology. California's statute's definition of properly served is out of date. This bill has bipartisan support to fix that problem, and I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no discussion or debate on this item, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 75, no 0. Measure passes. File item 153, AB 1195. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1195 by Assemblymember Ridley Thomas, an act relating to bonds.
Mr. Ridley Thomas, you may open.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. AB 1195 designates the California Debt Limit Allocation Committee as the state agency authorized to administer a federal bond program, and it authorizes the Debt Allocation Committee to allocate federal bond funds for financing public school facilities supported by the state treasurer. Respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Ridley Thomas. Seeing no discussion or debate on this item, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 72, noes 1. Measure passes. File items 154 and 155 pass and retain. File item 156, AB 1267. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1267 by Assemblymember Bloom, an act relating to lawsuits, liens, and other encumbrances.
Mr. Bloom.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker. Terrorism can take on unexpected forms, and today I'm presenting Assembly Bill 1267, which would further protect Californians from something known as paper terrorism. Paper terrorism is a serious matter. It's the practice of filing legal documents knowing that they are false and meritless in order to harass, intimidate, threaten, or retaliate against public officials, law enforcement, and private citizens. AB 1267 strengthens already existing laws and increases the discretion for filing officers. Acts of paper terrorism can range from simple and straightforward legal filings, such as frivolous lawsuits, to more complex strategies, such as filing IRS forms that fraudulently allege victims have been paid large sums of money on which they declared no taxes. But the most popular paper terrorism tactic is the use of bogus liens or other documents to cloud title to property owned by victims. This type of paper terrorism has been carried out against public officials, so it's important to all of us, but it also is increasingly used against private citizens. Whatever the ploy, the result creates serious legal and financial problems for those targeted: judges, elected officials, law enforcement, and as I said, now private individuals. California law already protects public officials and employees, public officers and employees who are targeted by these false encumbrances by allowing them to utilize a fast-track removal process. AB 1267 extends these protections to individuals and businesses so that they may all use this expedient process. Also, under current law, when public officers and employees are targeted by false encumbrances, they are entitled to seek civil remedies. AB 1267 permits individuals and businesses to pursue these remedies as well. Thank you for your patience, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Bloom. Seeing no discussion or debate on this item, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 74, no 0. Measure passes. File item 157, AB 1283. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1283 by Assemblymember Ting, an act relating to civil procedure.
Mr. Ting, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. AB 1283 specifies that an individual shall not be exempt from jury service due to their marital status, modeling juror non-discrimination statutes already enacted in 3 other states and the District of Columbia. I respectfully ask for aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Ting. Seeing no discussion or debate on this item, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 50, noes 17. Measure passes. File item 158, AB 627. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 627 by Assemblymember Gomez, an act relating to pharmacy benefit managers.
Mr. Gomez.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker and members. Today I'm presenting AB 627, which will help bring fair standards, transparency, and accessibility to the maximum allowable cost, or MAC, pharmacy reimbursement and appeals. This will enable pharmacies, small pharmacies, particularly the thousands of independent pharmacies across California, to spend more time assisting their patients and less time filing and following up on appeals. Recognizing the importance of MAC transparency, nearly 24 other states have passed similar legislation. It is now time for California to follow suit. We worked with the pharmacy benefit managers early on, and there is no opposition to this bill. I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Seeing no discussion or debate on this item, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 75, no 0. Measure passes. File item 159, that's AB 1430. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1430 by Assemblymember Cooper, an act relating to businesses.
Mr. Cooper, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. AB 1430 places in statute a definition of a family-owned business. Family-owned businesses are critical for California's economy. They employ approximately 7 million people in the state. They promote women to management at a higher rate, and they are more philanthropic. Having one uniform definition of a family-owned business will assist policymakers when implementing specific policy issues such as tax and estate succession. I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Seeing no discussion or debate on this item, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 75, no 0. Measure passes. File item 160, AB 1337. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1337 by Assemblymember Linder, an act relating to evidence.
Mr. Linder, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 1337 is the result of multiple meetings with stakeholders to streamline the process of obtaining medical records. Currently, healthcare facilities have individualized authorization forms in order to release a patient's health records. These forms vary widely depending on the individual healthcare provider, which makes the process of obtaining a complete healthcare record unnecessarily difficult. AB 1337 corrects this issue by allowing for a standardized form for records request forms. Healthcare providers will be able to increase overall efficiency and cut costs by transitioning to the use of one standardized form. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Linder. Seeing no discussion or debate on this item, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the vote. Ayes 74, no 0. Measure passes. File item 161. That's ACR 38. Clerk will read.
Assembly Concurrent Resolution 38 by Assemblymember Brown and others relative to unpaid family caregivers.
Ms. Brown, you may open.
Mr. Speaker and members, ACR 38 would establish the California Task Force on Family Caregiving to, one, examine the issues relative to the challenges faced by families of caregivers. It would also review the current network and services and supports available to caregivers. And three, it would provide policy recommendations to the legislature by July 2018. Many of our elderly are capable of living independently in their own homes, but they're receiving less assistance from community service programs due to cuts and elimination of state and county programs. Many are receiving care from unpaid family, friends, and that support is really a key driver in their ability to stay in his or her own home. However, this family assistance comes at a substantial cost to the caregivers themselves, and it takes a toll on their personal and professional lives. For many families in the midst of caregiving, there's a deep worry and a concern about the quality of care and quality of life of the relative for whom they're providing care. Many caregivers don't know who to call or where to get the right kind of help. ACR 38 would bring together a council of California's best and brightest minds in the field to caregive and to focus on determining the priorities and strategies that California caregivers need. Caregivers who struggle every day. They're invisible to most of us. They place their own lives on hold so that they can assist another. I ask that you would support this ACR, and I'm asking that the first roll be open to co-authors. I also want to say that this is a bipartisan effort.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Ms. Brown is asking the first roll be open for co-authors. The clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. Wishing to add as co-authors on ACR 38. Clerk will close the roll. There are 73 co-authors added on ACR 38. Without objection, we may take a voice vote on this item. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. File item 162. That's AJR 8. Clerk will read.
Assembly Joint Resolution 8 by Assemblymember Brown and others relative to the Older Americans Act of 1965.
Ms. Brown, you may again open.
Mr. Speaker and members, thank you again. Again, this is a bipartisan effort. Assembly Joint Resolution 8 would recognize the 50th anniversary of the Older Americans Act of 1965, where many of you were not even born. The resolution would also affirm the importance of services that the Older American Act has provided older persons during the past 5 decades. As you may have heard me say, and you heard it today, we must take care of our seniors before the silver tsunami hits. I ask for the first roll to be open to co-authors, and I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Mr. Bloom, you are recognized.
Mr. Speaker, in honor of my mom, who is going to celebrate her 100th birthday in a week and a half, I am proud to ask for an aye vote on this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Bloom. Ms. Brown is asking that the first roll be open for co-authors. With that, the clerk will open the roll. Members, this is for co-authors adding on AJR 8. This is for co-authors, members. There are 74 co-authors added on AJR 8. Members, we're going to take a roll call vote on this item. The clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 74, no 0. The resolution is adopted. Members, we're moving to the consent calendar. Does any member wish to remove an item from the consent calendar? Seeing and hearing none, the clerk will read the second-day consent calendar.
Assembly Bill 149 by Assemblymember Chavez, an act relating to water management.
The clerk will open the roll on the second-day consent calendar. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. Ayes 77, no 0. The consent calendar is adopted. Clerk will read the remaining bills on the second-day consent calendar.
Assembly Bill 143.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 169.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 189.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 226.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 303.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 345.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 376.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 485.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 583.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 607.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 614.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 646.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 649.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 728.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 732.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 780.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 793.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 868.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 869.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 873.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 929.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 930.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 951.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 963.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 985.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 1052.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 1060.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 1093 with urgency.
Ayes 77. Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 1126.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 1148.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 1207.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 1262 with urgency.
Ayes 77, no 0. On the urgency, ayes 77, no 0 on the bill.
Assembly Bill 1312.
Ayes 77, no 0.
Assembly Bill 1232.
Ayes 77, no 0.
And Assembly Bill 1516.
Ayes 77, no 0. We will now move to announcements and adjournments in memory. The following members were granted prior permission to speak on an adjournment in memory. Members, if you could please take your seats for our adjournments in memory. Please take your seats, members. Mr. Gallagher, you are recognized for your adjournment in memory.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, members, I rise to adjourn in memory of the Blanco brothers, Carlos, Antonio, and Lucas. 3 brothers who were tragically taken from us on April 25th in a car crash that was caused by an alleged drunk driver on Highway 113 in Yuba City. These 3 brothers had an unbreakable bond and an everlasting friendship visible to all those who were friends and with the family. Carlos was the oldest. He was 21 years old, the leader, and he had recently become a father for the first time, and he leaves behind a baby girl and a fiancé. Antonio was a quiet, caring family man. He was 19 years old. He leaves behind a son and a pregnant wife, Erica. The youngest, Lucas, who's 15 years old, was a promising student and caring young man. And I'm told that there was a story about Lucas that when he found out that his older brother, Antonio, was going to be having a baby, he saved up some money and bought the newborn a 4-foot-tall dog, stuffed dog. And that he was always thinking of others and had that caring heart. The three brothers went together everywhere, including on that fateful day. They were together. They were returning to a family party. They always looked out for each other. They were constantly helping those in need and always had fun lending a hand. This one touches me really close to home, members, as I myself have three brothers that I grew up with, shared many memories together, just as these three young men did. I couldn't imagine losing them all in a single moment. It also strikes me as a father when I think of the young children who will grow up without their fathers, their uncles. And accidents such as these remind us that there is still work to be done to educate and protect our citizens from driving under the influence that affects our families and leaves huge holes in our community. Certainly, the loss of the Blanco brothers leaves a hole in our community. On Sunday, hundreds showed up to a vigil to help support the grieving family and to help cover funeral expenses. The outpouring of support was incredible. Their mother, Sherry Beltran, said, "I think my boys are looking down with pride, knowing how many people they touched and cared for. They will never be separated." My heart and prayers go out to the Blanco family as they go through this period of mourning. All three brothers will be dearly missed by all those who had the pleasure of knowing them, and as I said, so many were touched by them in our community. So therefore, today I ask that the Assembly adjourn in the memory of the Blanco brothers, Carlos, Antonio, and Lucas. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Mr. Williams, you are recognized.
Members, I rise today to adjourn in the memory of someone many of you have met, Trina Cohen. Trina, who some of you know through Sam Cohen, her husband, the government and legal specialist for the San Ynez Band at Chumash. She died peacefully in her sleep this past Saturday. She was only 43 years old. Trina was born in 1971 in the U.S. territory of Guam. She was someone that anyone who knew her, even if you knew her for many years, you almost never saw her in anything but a good and positive mood, given really a lot of energy and love to everyone around her. She was an avid Dodger fan and told everyone else she bled blue. Her daughter, however, would call herself a Giants fan just to tease her. Trina had a passion for gardening and growing her own herbs and vegetables. She also loved to travel and eat exotic foods. She was the kind of mom that would walk her daughter to and from school and hang out with her every single day. One of the most attentive and loving parents I've ever known. She is survived by her husband, Sam, daughter Rebecca, and sons, Abraham and Keanu. And the shock and anguish of the tribe and her family of losing her so suddenly is something that we should all offer our prayers for them. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Members, if we could maintain your attention, a couple of our members have announcements. Dr. Weber, you are recognized at your desk for your announcement.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Sub 6 of the budget is going to meet today immediately upon adjournment in room 447. So if you're a member of Sub 6, we'd appreciate you coming to 447 for a meeting of the budget Sub 6.
Thank you, Dr. Weber. Ms. Grove, you are recognized for your announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, members, is the National Day of Prayer, and it's deeply embedded in our history. Since the first call to prayer in 1775, when the Congressional Congress came together and called for the colonies to pray for our nation's founding. In 1952, a joint resolution by Congress was signed by then President Truman, and then it was revamped in 1988 when President Reagan made it the first Thursday of every May. So I would encourage all of you to pray for your families, our families, the state, the nation, the world. And if anybody's going to be in Sacramento tonight at 5:30, they have a prayer service on the North Steps.
Thank you, Ms. Grove. Members, the Business and Professions Committee will meet in the Rules Committee room upon adjournment. That's B&P in the Rules Committee room upon adjournment. The session schedule is as follows. Friday, May 8th, no floor session, no check-in session. Monday, May 11th, floor session at noon. All other items remaining will be passed and retained. All motions shall be continued. Seeing and hearing no further business, I am ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Ms. Garcia moves, Ms. Waldron seconds, that this House stands adjourned until Monday, May 11th at noon. Quorum call is lifted.